Hey everybody, Dave here, and I just wanted to share with you folks that I had the pleasure of attending a online preview for the upcoming Starfinder Afterlight video game, and I just want to get out a quick video. This is probably not going to be very fancy. I'm just going to want to go over some of the things that were revealed in that presentation, as well as addressing some of the things that were answered during a Q&A. And apologies in advance. This is not going to be very fancy. I just want to get this out into the community as soon as possible, and I can maybe follow it up later with another video. But let's talk about Starfinder Afterlight. So, if you don't know what Starfinder Afterlight is, it is an upcoming CRPG video game. So, if you're not familiar with the CRPG genre, it is, if you've ever played Baldur's Gate 3, that's a CRPG. Pathfinder First Edition, a company called Owlcat put out Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous and Pathfinder Kingmaker. Those are CRPGs. And so this is the first stab at a CRPG in the Starfinder universe. So that's what it is. And I should say that anytime I mention Baldur's Gate 3 as an example, let's all just kind of keep our expectations managed and in check. They are of similar genres. They are drawing inspiration from the same sort of progenitor in Baldur's Gate 1, but I don't think anybody expects Starfinder Afterlight to be on the same incredibly huge scale as Baldur's Gate 3. So it's probably not going to be like that huge size and scope, but it is that same genre of game. And if you're familiar with playing Baldur's Gate 3, you're probably familiar with what you're going to see with Starfinder Afterlight. They are Starfinder Afterlight, just like Baldur's Gate 3, is sort of a isometric three-quarter view. You have your characters and they walk on some kind of a background. The demos they showed us did show a 3D rotating background, although I can't guarantee that every scene you walk into will be able to rotate by 360 degrees 3D terrain. A lot of CRPGs use sort of a 2D background that the characters walk on. They did not state one way or another if the entire game has 3D backgrounds, but they did show that some of them at least do. Also, kind of a staple of the genre are branching dialogue trees. As player agency, being able to influence the story is very important to the studio that's making this game, just like it is to people who play the tabletop game and just like people who play other CRPGs. So there are branching dialogue trees used throughout. And although they didn't say it in the presentation, I felt like they possibly drew some inspiration from the Persona games for how they show and display these different text boxes for character speech. And while we're on the topic of character dialogue, they did say that your dialogue choices, just like with a lot of CRPGs, a lot of your choices are going to be influenced by what your ancestry is, what your class is. Other things possibly could influence what your dialogue options are in those trees. So let's talk a little bit about who is making this game. It's a relatively new studio called Epic Tellers Entertainment. They're based out of Barcelona. This is their first game, but it's made up of veterans of the video game industry. So they have people on their team, and it's a fairly nice sized team. They said 30 people are part of the team that's making this game. And they have people from Crytek, Ubisoft, Gameloft, and some other video game developers, some larger video game studios and publishers are involved in making this. Not the studios and the publishers, but people who've previously worked for those studios and publishers are. And that sort of, makes a favorable comparison to the success that we've seen with Expedition 33. Expedition 33 is, in my eyes, it's game of the year. It's the best thing I've played in 2025. And it's made by a group of game developers who used to work for Ubisoft. And they said, you know what, we would rather go do our own thing. And they left Ubisoft and they made their own studio and they made a game that they were passionate about. And the results paid off. I mean, you can see their passion in Expedition 33. I'm in no way saying that this game is on the level of Expedition 33 or is going to be on the level of Expedition 33, but I do like this story of leaving the big studios to go make a game you're actually passionate about, and hopefully we'll see similar successes with Epic Tellers and Starfinder Afterlight as what we saw with the folks who made Expedition 33. So when is it coming? Well, it goes on Kickstarter this coming Tuesday. They did not share with us what the pledge levels were or what the cost will be or what the stretch goals are. All that's being saved till Tuesday, but it does go into Kickstarter. The Kickstarter launch is this Tuesday. There will be a playtest. It's going to be available on Steam Early Access in 2026, and it will ultimately finally be released. The 1.0 official release is planned for 2027. Now, it's going to be available initially on Steam, and then later, probably, almost certainly, other PC storefronts. They didn't make any promises or list names, but I'm thinking you'll probably be able to find it on the Epic Store or Origin or so forth, but they're starting with Steam. And of course, the question came up of, well, what about our console friends? What about Switch and PlayStation and so forth? And they said that they are focused entirely on making the most amazing PC experience they can. And if there is ever a port to consoles, that's a conversation for a later date. It sounds like they're not even entertaining that right now. They're just focused solely on PC. But I mean, I think logic says if after this comes out, if it's a success on PC, there might be a port. But that's not a conversation they're really even getting into now. They're focused entirely on making the best PC game they possibly can. Question came up of, is this going to be adapted from a Starfinder adventure path or a standalone tabletop adventure? And no, Afterlight is a completely original story. And that also raises the question of what is the Afterlight? What does this mean? In the words of the gentleman who led the presentation, Afterlight is a terrible thing. This is when the universe extinguishes all energy, there is no more light in the universe, and everything disappears. And something really bad accelerates that process, and you witness this. And then the adventure itself, it revolves around trying to prevent whatever this mechanism is from bringing about Afterlight. They were a little cagey in what they shared during the presentation, but they said that you and another character, an NPC, witnessed this event, and there was some verbiage used of like she goes back before you, and so they didn't outright say that there's time travel involved in this narrative, but the language of she goes back before you makes me think that maybe you witness this thing and then go back in time and try to prevent it. I don't know. That's pure speculation on my part. As far as where the story takes place, the only definite location that I recall in the missioning is Akaton. That the story begins on Akaton as the first planet, and you go to other places in the Starfinder universe after that, but they didn't mention any. So a question came up of why Kickstarter. They are fully funded. They are fully funded to make the game in sort of a minimal viable product state. That's my language, not theirs. But they did say that they're fully funded right now. So I think, even though they're in pre-alpha now, they have the money to make the game in its most bare bones form, possibly. Again, that's my language. But they really want Kickstarter so that they can get funding and money to layer on even more awesome. They specifically said that some funding that comes in from Kickstarter could be used to make more of the game voice acted, and that funding from Kickstarter could be used to add additional ancestries. Right now, there are 7 playable ancestries in the game. Like with most CRPGs, you will be making your own playable character and surrounded by a cast of companions, who I'll talk about in just a second here. And right now there are 7 ancestries you can choose from. If you've ever played Starfinder, you know that there are a lot more ancestries in that universe. And they would love to have funding from the Kickstarter to help put more of those in. So that's why the Kickstarter. I mean, it sounds like they use the term fully funded, which makes me believe it's going to be released one way or another. The question is it going to be released in its, what I'm calling the bare bones state, or is it going to get a lot of money from Kickstarter to make it even more awesome? And I guess that's what the community will decide on Tuesday when it hits Kickstarter. They spent a real good amount of time talking about the companions. They're very passionate about companions joining you on this adventure. Again, if you've ever played any sort of CRPG, companions are a big deal. And they wanted to make sure all of these companions had their own personalities and that they all had their own individual stories that you will engage with during the time that you're trying to prevent Afterlight as sort of the major story. So the first companion that they shared with us is Kole. Kole is a Vesk soldier, and he is voiced by a name that is legendary in the realm of voice acting, although I don't know if I've ever heard it pronounced. I've only seen it in print. I've seen it in the credits of 100 million television shows and 100 million video games I've played. So I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing this name, I'm sure, but Fred Tatasciore? Yeah, that's my guess. But you've probably seen that name somewhere too. He was Shirren in Mass Effect. He's Soldier 76 in Overwatch, and he's been in a million other things. And he is the voice of Kole, the Vesk soldier in Starfinder Afterlight. His backstory is he is destined by his fathers to be a great general for the Veskirium. And the Veskirium is currently in the middle of a great intergalactic war with another unnamed race. So they need all hands on deck. They need all of their available warriors there. But for reasons not revealed, Kole is not amongst them. And Kole's passion is acting. In fact, he wants to be an action movie star. In the words of the presenter, he wants to be the Schwarzenegger of the Veskirium. So that background of him wanting to be an action movie star, I guess, influences the way that he behaves and acts as a character in the story of the Vesk soldier who is destined to be a great general but just wants to go make movies. The second character companion that they shared is Tycho. Tycho is an Ysoki operative. He is voiced by Einel Tomlinson, and his backstory is he's a brilliant genius inventor, and he invented something of great value. They did not reveal in the presentation what this invention is, but they did say that his business partner stabbed him in the back and betrayed him. And now Tycho is extremely suspicious of others. He's not very trusting. He has extreme trust issues, I believe was the phrase they used. So you may have some difficulty bringing him around and getting him to join your crew and your party in this game. The third character companion that they shared is Lou. Lou is an Android Envoy. Her full name is LU313. As an android, she was designed for infiltration and assassination, but she's been in storage for a long time. They say that when you find her, she's like in a warehouse, almost completely deactivated, and all she's had to do all day long, day in and day out for I don't know how long, but they say for a long time, is view trashy television on or holovids on the infosphere. So she spends all of her day watching like the new Housewives of Akiton or whatever. And being this android assassin envoy who has spent hundreds if not thousands of hours consuming trash television influences the way that she talks and behaves. And the last full companion that they shared during the presentation is a Borai Solarian named Sterling. If you're not familiar with Borai's, they have one foot in the world of the living, one foot in the world of the dead. They're sort of kind of like, I guess, Dompiers, maybe not as vampire themed, but like those sort of duskwalkers, so to speak, that you may be familiar with in Pathfinder. Um, and his story is he was killed, he was murdered, and somehow came back to life as a Borai. And so his character arc, his character story throughout this adventure is he's trying to solve his own murder. So those were the officially announced and revealed character companions. There was one more companion that was not officially announced, but they did kind of let slip in some of their answers, which is a character named Preach. And Preach is a Shirren that appears in some of the marketing materials, and she's often shown with this little larva, little baby Shirren larva that she carries around with her. They didn't officially announce her, so we don't know what her backstory is or who's her voice actress, but I'm assuming she is a mystic from the name and the fact that mystic hasn't been used by one of the other companions. But those would be, I guess, in total, 5 companions we know about so far. They said that there are more companions that they're waiting to announce at a later date. They also talked a little bit about Captain Khali. And Captain Khali is not a companion, but is a very significant NPC. She's a human starship captain. She was your captain, I guess, prior to the events of the story, or maybe up to the beginning of the events of the story. And she also witnesses this great event that portends the coming of Afterlight. And she is voiced by Carolina Ravassa, who you might know as Sombra in Overwatch. And another person who's not going to be, well, they haven't announced as being one of your companions, but the voice director, the person who's in charge of coaching everybody who records voices and helping them develop their characters and how they should read lines and making sure that all this comes together in an epic story is a familiar name to fans of voice acting, and that is Neil Newbon. Neil Newbon is best known for his role of Astarion in Baldur's Gate 3, which he won a ton of awards for his, and rightfully so, for his fantastic portrayal of Astarion in Baldur's Gate 3. He is the voice director for Starfinder Afterlight. Now, in the Q&A portion, the devs were asked, now, is Neil just going to be the voice director, or is he also going to be voicing a character? And they were super cagey about, giving no answers or giving us a non-answer. So nothing to announce right now, but I would not be terribly surprised if in the future they do reveal that he is also voicing someone, although we don't know that for a fact right now. Also, something they said about these companions is that every companion in the game is romanceable, and there are some romanceable options that are not companions. And for all of the romanceable options in the game, none of them are restricted due to player gender. So whoever you're playing, whatever your sexuality is, whatever your outlook is, there isn't a situation like some of the older, like Star Wars The Old Republic, you had to be a certain gender to romance certain people, in the original Dragon Ages and so on and so forth. They're not gating anybody behind gender options for romance in this game. They also said that you can play the game. It is a strictly single-player game. There's no multiplayer. But I believe they said parties of 4 is the max. I think they said 4, which makes sense because that's kind of the standard Starfinder, Pathfinder, adventure party size. But you can play it as strictly solo, where it's just you with no companions. And you can also play it by hiring mercenaries. So much like Baldur's Gate 3, if there's not a companion available with the skill set you want, you can hire a mercenary that might fill that need better. So let me just go through some of the Q&A stuff that popped up. Will there be Steam Early Access? Yes, it will be available on Steam Early Access, specifically the first chapter of the game, which is roughly 10 to 15 hours of gameplay, will be available in Steam Early Access, and the rest of the game after Chapter 1 is being saved for the full final release. This sounds very similar to the way that Baldur's Gate 3 had its first chapter in Early Access, and then the rest released later as well. Will there be mod support? Yes, there will be mod support, but it may not be available right at launch. It may come a little bit after launch. They described this game as being, quote, community focused, and they seem to support the idea of fleshing out this game world by allowing fans in the community to create mods to fill in gaps. They're not going to be able to include literally every single ancestry from Starfinder in the game. Maybe some members of the community can help fill in some of those gaps. They're very excited to see what the community does with modding. How long is the game? They said that the game at release should be about 40 to 60 hours to play, and there's about 100 hours of content being made. But because of branching narrative paths and the way that certain dialogue options are gated behind, like your ancestry and your class, you're not going to be able to see all 100 hours in one playthrough. Each playthrough will be about 40 to 60 hours, but they are making about 100 hours worth of gameplay. They were asked about real-time combat. There is no real-time combat. This is only turn-based. And the demo footage they showed did display in the bottom center of the bar. You can see 3 little glowing dots, which they didn't specifically say, but I'm going to guess those are your 3 actions. And it's very much, it is the 2nd edition Starfinder rule set in a video game. So making that real time would be pretty complicated. It's only turn-based. They were asked about changing companions' classes. Each companion has a default class when you meet them, but you can respec any companion into any of the classes. So if you don't want Sterling to be a Solarian, you can respec him and make him a Mystic, whatever, a Witch Warper, whatever. And they also said that multi-classing is supported through dedication feats, just like we're used to in the tabletop game. A fun little bit of information is our good friend, Captain Concierge, is in the game. Captain Concierge is going to assist people with learning the lore, so you don't necessarily have to come to the game already knowing everything about the Starfinder setting. Captain Concierge is here to help you. He also is going to assist you with character creation. He's going to be on the loading screens to give some tips and that sort of thing, but Captain Concierge is in the game. They were also asked about Pathfinder elements. And specifically, is there anything like that's strictly Pathfinder that's going to make its way in the game because of the way these universes are connected and the way that the rules sets are basically the same? And they were very cagey. They said, yes, there are some strictly Pathfinder elements included in the game, but he wouldn't go into those details. And he did like the idea that because the rule sets were the same, somebody with the mods could, in theory, create a Pathfinder game because everything, all the math and everything under the hood is there for you to do that. And this also makes me think, again, that maybe there is a little bit of a time travel, timey-wimey element to this adventure. But again, pure speculation on my part. They were asked about flight. Flight, like jetpacks and a flying spell, that is not in the game, but levitation is. So no, like, just zipping around the map on a jetpack, but levitation, I guess a more stationary, hovering means of traveling over a pit or something that is in the game. As far as classes, all the classes from Starfinder Player Core are in the game. Starships. So this was my contribution to the conversation. I wanted to know what they were doing with starships. So starships are included in the game, but not there's no starship combat. There's no grand starship customization. They compare, your party is going to have an iconic starship for them to function in that will be their home base, and they likened it to the Normandy in Mass Effect. it will ferry you from place to place. A lot of important things will happen aboard the ship, but you're not going to fly the ship like you would Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen or something like that. But they did say it is possible both to board other ships and to be boarded by other ships. So I think there's going to be opportunity for combat in your ship, just not using your ship in starship combat the way that some Starfinder RPG players might do with their parties. Alignment was asked. Can you be evil? They compared it to the alignment spectrum in Mass Effect, where there's like Paragon and there's Renegade, and Renegade can be, quote, very nasty, but not pure evil. But they did say that anything you do on this alignment spectrum will influence the way your companions react to you. Just like in Baldur's Gate 3 or a lot of other CRPGs. If you do a lot of stuff that your companions don't like, your companions may leave you. They did say that Preach, the one name dropped but not officially announced companion, is likely to stay with you the longest. It sounds like whatever her story is deeply ingrained into the adventure, and she's a key NPC. But it sounds like the others, like they may just up and leave if you make them upset. As far as ancestries, there's currently 7 playable ancestries in the game. The footage showed Barathu on the screen. I don't know if they're playable, but they were in the demo. You could see them. But they did say that Skittermanders are in the game but not playable. They specifically said they were very cagey about it, like some other parts of the presentation. But they said Skittermanders are special. They want them to have their own special part in the story. And right now, they're not playable. And it sounded like that they didn't want Skittermanders to be playable, although they didn't exactly use those words. That seemed to be the vibe I was getting. But they said 7 ancestries available now, hopefully more to come with the Kickstarter. And they were asked about their experience with the tabletop RPG. They're making this Starfinder computer RPG. Do they play the tabletop game? And yes, they are players and fans of the tabletop game as well. And they said that a lot of what's in the game, especially humor, came directly out of their tabletop game. He said, they would do like a 3-hour session and they'd have pages of ideas of, oh, maybe we can add this to the game. Maybe we can add that to the game. Oh, remember when they did this or said this? It was funny. And like a couple of examples they gave. One was a debate over whether or not a Skittermander could ride on top of a Barathu. And apparently that's something that came up in one of their tabletop games, and it sounds like they're really committed to finding a way to work that into the video game as well. And they said some of the dialogue is kind of silly that you might hear in the game came out of silly conversations at the game table, as often occurs in game tables. Specifically, he said, debates over whether or not Barathu smell bad because they use flatulence to kind of propel themselves. There's big living gas bags, and that's the way they move. So do they smell bad? Are they stinky or whatever? Apparently that debate was born at the tabletop game, and I guess is in somewhere in some fashion in the video game as well. And the last question they addressed from the audience was about free Archetype. No, free Archetype is not part of the game. It's not in the system. But and this is purely my speculation. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody is able to mod that in some fashion in the future. But as of right now, free Archetype is not part of it. So that's a look at the information that was revealed in the Starfinder Afterlight online press event. Again, I just wanted this to be a quick, mostly informal video just to get the information out to the community as soon as possible. But let me know in the comments. What do you think? Are you excited for Starfinder Afterlight? Is there anything in that you've heard today that makes you hopeful for it? Is there any features that you'd want to see, or maybe you're disappointed that's not in there? feel free to have some conversation in the in the comments below. I will also make sure that I include in the description links to the other resources that are available, a link to the Kickstarter, a link to the trailers, and so forth. And of course, if you found this information helpful to you, please subscribe, click that like button, the bell, so you don't miss my future Starfinder coverage, all that good stuff. And thanks for watching. Take care. Happy gaming.